All right, guys. So before we even get into Audition, we actually have to go over a few basic things about audio so that you can get things to work properly on the computers in the lab. All right. So first off, you need to change the audio device. By default, the audio device will be the Avid box on the left-hand side, but that doesn't have a standard headphone jack. So if you want to use the headphone jack that's actually on the right side of the computer, you need to go to Start, Control Panel, and then you're looking for the section that says Hardware and Sound. And then under Sound, you want Manage Audio Devices. And it's going to list all of the different devices that you have. Yours at home or yours at the computers at the school will be completely different than mine, right? So we all have different hardware. The one you're looking for at the school that goes to the right-hand side down here is called speakers/headphones. It's the only one I think that says headphones on there. And if you put it to there, you should start hearing sound out of the headphone jack. The other thing you may need to look into, if things are really soft, right? Like you can, check down here, see that the volume is turned up, but you can also go to properties for that particular, device and go to levels. The levels are never up to 100. That would be insanely high. So you want to check and make sure. I've seen a couple people it was turned down for some reason. It was turned like way, way down here. All right, so you want to make sure you set this to default, whichever one is the one you need, and have some audio playing so that you can, check. You'll see, let me play something here. You'll see this green bar coming up like an equalizer. So if there's music or sound playing, you'll hear it there, or see it there rather. All right, so we get that set up. Another thing to keep in mind is that, and you can get this set of files from the K drive at the school, but when it comes to playing sound, there's always going to be a few different ways you can listen to that on the computer. And if you want to control which software you use to listen to the music, you right click on it and say open with. Now again, my selections are different from yours or the ones at the school. The school only has QuickTime Player, Windows Media Player, and VLC. I highly recommend getting VLC, even if you're at home getting VLC. VLC will play almost anything. If I play that, you won't hear it yet because it's very, very quiet. All right, but that way you can control what you're opening. So if you're working at home and you don't want iTunes opening up every single time you try to listen to something, that's how you would do it. All right. Also, you can see that these are all .wav files, except for the one. WAV files are better to work with. They're uncompressed, at least to begin with. Once you hand something in to me, or somewhere else, you'll probably need to make it an MP3 so that it's a manageable file size. Because let's see here. I'm trying to get rid of the, there it is. So we can see that the WAV files are like 68 and 40 megs a piece, whereas the MP3 is only 4 megs. So WAV files are great until you need to send it somewhere very quickly. And the last thing we need to go over is when you open up Audition at the school, every time it's going to say, list of audio devices connected to blah, blah, blah has changed. Do you want to open audio hardware preferences? And you should say yes. And it brings you right to audio hardware. And what it's asking you is for the default output. It's asking you what to output as. And mine's actually wrong. I need to change it to Logitech because I'm using headphones. And it's going to say device changes can modify blah, 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 blah. Do you want to? Yes, I want to continue. Yours, again, speakers/headphones. If you're at the school, it's speakers/headphones. If you're at your own home computer, you got to figure it out which one is the one you want. All right. So we hit OK. If you forget to do that or you hit no by default, you can always go to Edit, Preferences, Audio Hardware. That's exactly where we were. All right, so you got to get used to a little bit of hardware information coming in. Otherwise, you won't be able to, listen to anything or do any work. Cancel. All right, so first off, I want to show you, Audition. You can just open, a WAV file. So if I go, sorry, I've got too much stuff here. There we go. If I go and I open up the one that I have an MP3 of, right? It says Lily's Theme MP3. It's from the Harry Potter soundtrack. It still actually has all the information tags that you would show in iTunes, whereas the other ones don't. And I hit open, and it opens up the waveform just so I can look at it. Now there's not too much you can do in this window with this file. This is not for editing, this is for like looking at something, maybe selecting a piece of it to export. You'll see this little decibel thing right here. You can turn the whole thing up or down. That's about the extent of what you can do. There's not much you can do here. But I would like to export this because I would rather have a WAV file. Now, if you know something about audio, you're probably thinking, well, MP3 to WAV makes no sense. You are correct. MP3 is compressed. Uncompressing it to WAV, this isn't going to make it sound any better, but I can show you guys how to, export as different file types. You always want to start larger and compress from there. So, file, export, file. And it comes up with name of thing, .wav. The location is the last place I saved something, which is wrong. So I'm going to browse and get to the same location everything else is. I hit save. You can change formats, so there's a lot of different choices for audio formats. The ones you will most likely work with are MP3s, which are very compressed. Everyone has MP3s. And WAV files, which are uncompressed. AIF is, if you work on a Mac, is very common, but I don't know if Macs have changed now where you can actually use WAV files. They should have. It's ridiculous if you can't. The rest of these are super specific. If you get into audio, like later on in your career, that's what will happen. All right, so everything looks okay, and so I just hit OK. And if I go to that folder, it'll have made actually by default a couple different things. This is the original MP3. This third one down says lilystream.wav. The second one down says PKF. This is like an artifact of working in Audition. It says peak data file. I'll be honest, I'm not super sure what that means. Hold on to it is the best bet, but the one you really need is the WAV file. So if you ever export anything from here or record anything in Audition, like in our audio room, it's the WAV file. If you don't have the WAV file, this other one is meaningless. It doesn't do anything. It contains no information. You can even see with the file size difference. There's nothing. There's no there. So make sure you are paying attention to the extension. If you are working on your computer at home and you can't see extensions, I highly recommend turning on the ability to see extensions because they're very super extra important. Okay, so that's how you export one file. But how do you deal with multiple files? Well, we need to switch to something called a multi-track. If I click there, it brings up this little like make a new thing. This is your project file, right? This is you creating a canvas in Illustrator or setting up your pages in InDesign, your sequence in Premiere, right? But in Audition, they're called sessions. This is your working file. This is the thing you hold on to while you're working with stuff. So I can say class example, right? By default, it sends it to somewhere nuts. It sends it to an Audition specific folder, to Adobe specific to your documents folder. No. I already have a folder made, right? My audio folder. So I go in there and I say select folder. Everything else keep as the default. And I say OK. And it has created a new working file, which is actually exists in here, because you can have multiple session files kind of switching back and forth to them. So it exists as a thing in your project panel, which is on the top left-hand corner. And if I go back to, my audio folder, you will see that it's created this new folder in here that says class example. And in there is the .sesx folder. It's a session file. This is your working file. If you don't have this, you can't make any more changes to something even if you've exported it. All right. Now, I made this, quote, audio folder because I need a folder to contain all of the things, all of the assets, which is what we call all these WAV files that would go into my project, and the project file itself, which is this. the reason for this is that, like Premiere, like InDesign, and like other things you will work with in the future, those files are not existing in what you're working in. They're just getting linked to it. And if they move relative to your session file, if your session file goes to, your C drive and something else goes to your flash drive, they can't see each other anymore, and they don't know. You will have dead links and they'll say we can't find your files. So the best defense against that is to always have a folder already pre-made where everything can exist, and you put everything in there, your save file, everything, you have to cart all of it around with you, right? So I'll put that off to the side. We need to import more things though. Can't just have one sound file. So we go File, Import, File. Now this is not opening. Remember when we opened it, we were in this waveform, right? You see these two buttons here. You can open a single waveform. We don't want to do that. We want to import them. Import, File, and I'm going to grab all of them, including the wave that I just made because it didn't import it in automatically. And I hit open, and when it does that, by the way, I get PKF files to go with all of my wave files, except for these two for some unknown reason. So be aware of that. It's going to make new stuff. All right, so I'm going to pull out all of these different files. Let's see, that's called Tron titles, the end title. This is also from Tron Legacy. It's called Derez. We've got Obliviate from Harry Potter, and we've got Lily's theme from Harry Potter. This one I exported recently says the sample rate's a little different in the session file. Should we make it the same as the session file? And I say yes. And then maybe I should pay better attention to what my session file is so I can make this wave the same as the others. All right. But I bring out all these different types of audio because I want you to see what you can know about audio tracks just visually, right? You don't, obviously you need to listen to what you're working on in the final project, but we can tell a lot about what's going on here. First of all, this one's pretty loud. You can see it's filling up. The waveform is filling up the entire thing. These waveforms are, the louder everything is, the taller they are, right? So over here, it's really quiet. Here, it's like, medium. And then here, it's not only loud, but it's constant. And then it gets more constant, right? There's no negative space. Here, it's pretty loud, and then it kind of dips down a little bit, and then it gets to louder, and then, there's variation. And then with these two tracks, there's actually way more variation. So it's super quiet on this one, then there's a little bit and a little bit more, and then it kind of grows, shrinks down again, and then gets louder. I can kind of tell what these sound like just by looking at them. And the other thing is that look at how even this rhythm is, right? Well, that's because this is electronic music. It's from Tron Legacy. Here, I'll play, let me mute the other three. Oh, it's not going out to my headphones. That's lovely. Nothing like having things break. Let's see. It thinks it's putting them out there. Master clock default input. Well, that's disappointing. Let's see if I can actually get it to come out through my speakers so I know. Yeah. Apologies, that was very loud. So this, my Audition has backwards what two things are called. So that's always fun. But you just got to try things and test them out until they work. And also, if I scrub through this, it makes noise. So we're going to mute that. So M means mute, just so I don't have to listen to it while I move this around. But you can hear that. It's like super techno, basically. Whereas these other tracks that have variations, right? That's just orchestra music. And you can kind of already tell what kind of music it is by looking at it. The other thing I will say is that we need to look at these things visually because your other audio settings can always change. Different headphones sound different. You have about 13 different places where you can change the volume for the entire system. Sorry about that ding. There's also some overall volume stuff in Audition probably. Every system you go to is going to sound a little bit different. So you need a way to constantly know the volume of something. And I'm going to actually break this so that we can play stuff and watch it and not actually have to listen to it. Because these things are not meant to go together and they will sound terrible. Alright, so I said before that this one for the end titles was loud. And it is, but it's not too loud. And we can tell that by looking at this, right? This is the overall levels for this entire thing, which right now, because it's only one track, is the same as this one track, right? So you get levels in two different places, one for each track individually and one for the whole piece. And this one's just easier to see because it's bigger. Green means softer, yellow means, oh, it's starting to get pretty loud, and red means loud. But it's not too loud, because if it was, we'd be seeing this over here. Alright, we'd be seeing two red bars show up over here. So, let me see something real quick. It's still working. I like to check to make sure the recordings are still working every once in a while. So, now what we have to do is break it on purpose. I'm turning that up. Haha. So, when something is too loud, right, we get these little bars that show up. And the reason they show up there and stay there is because you can see that it's constantly moving, right? Right? It's up, down, up, down, up, down. So is your eye really going to catch it if it comes up here? No. So we have these little red bars that show up permanently until you stop it and reset something. And that's Audition's way of telling you, nope, your levels are too high. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, it didn't sound that loud, your volume is turned down somewhere. Because if this is telling you it's too loud, it's too loud. Now the volume is this yellow bar, once you select it, that goes across the entire thing. And I'm going to bring this back down to 0. 0 means as it is, as it was recorded. Plus means make it louder. Minus means make it softer. Now I have two things, neither of which is too loud, but if I combine them, I think it gets, yep, there we go, it gets too loud. But you can see each one individually is not. So that doesn't necessarily tell you which thing is the culprit, because it could be the accumulation of all the different sound. So you could have things that sound individually perfectly great, but once you start combining them, it's too much, and you start getting what's called clipping, which is the technical term for things sounding like crap because they were recorded too loud. Basically, you're missing part of the waveform of the sound, and so the high end of things gets clipped off. So if I restart that, now actually I turned them down so far that they're quieter together than they were individually, like because I turned them down too much. So if I wanted this to be at the level it was before, I'd have to kind of inch them up back a little bit. Alright, so that yellow bar right here, whoop, don't do that yet, that is the volume bar, the general volume bar. I'm going to get rid of this, which means you just click it and hit delete. It's real easy. And I'm going to bring this one up to the top because you can do that. You can always move things from, one track to another. Oh, hello. I accidentally put that there. If you accidentally put this little keyframe on the volume, right-click, delete selected keyframe. But the reason, actually, I'm going to get rid of this. There we go. I have the Obliviate one up. The reason I have this is because it's got all these peaks and valleys that are not unlike speaking. Good grief. I clicked on this all over the place. And I want to show you guys how to trim things, because when you're recording for class, you're probably going to be trimming stuff up a little bit. So first of all, this is partially like Premiere. I can hover over the edge, my cursor changes to that red thing with an arrow, and I can pull this like this, I can pull this like this, right? Easy peasy. What you cannot do is have this start somewhere over here and then start halfway through. I cannot push this any further to the left. I can have there be dead space and then the sound comes in, but I can't go the other way. So you have to start, if you want the sound to start sooner, you have to turn this back. But what if you want to cut it into separate pieces? There's a razor tool. We're only using two tools that are up here. One is the move tool, which is basically the selection tool. And the razor blade is just like Premiere. And when you cut, make sure you're not on these two lines because it'll make a point instead of cutting it. But everywhere I cut, right, it's gonna basically slice the audio. And I get my move tool back, and I now have different clips that I can move around as I want or overlap. Now, in your case, you'll probably be getting rid of dead space, excuse me, in between things. Or maybe there's a stanza you really hate, and you're like, I don't want that. And you go here. Now, the hard part is you have to really listen though, because if I zoom in, I'm pulling this down to like get this bigger, and then I'm going to take this over here, which shows me all of my stuff, and we're going to zoom way in. And you can see that it's not actually going down to nothing because this wasn't talking, whereas this did. So this right here, I could get away with trimming it off a little bit because there's nothing being said. But if you're trying to trim out something where you kind of trailed between words and you didn't really take a breath like I'm doing now, then you will have to have a bit of a fade out, which is getting really into the weeds, really like tiny finesse choices. We're dealing, I think, with, that's not seconds, I don't think. Oh, maybe it is. Yeah. So this is actually quite a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the volume line and get a keyframe, and which I might call an envelope point at some point because I'm old. That's what they used to be called. And then I can click again. We need two because we need one to hold it at the standard volume, and then another one to bring it down to nothing. And what this will do is have the audio. Oh, I forgot. I broke it so we didn't have to listen to it. There we go. Yes, I know. Right? Goes down to nothing. Like absolutely nothing. So if you see any of these squills right here, there's something there. And if you cut it off at the knees, it's gonna sound terrible. Let's see if I can get that to happen somewhere else. There we go. So this is, I've got this trimmed at a really stupid spot. Sorry about that. Also sorry about that. We are going to just bring that down generally. You heard that pop, right? That pop is what happens when the sound just cuts off really terribly. So you always, even if it's only for like less than half a second, you have to have a fade out. Right? You can make it really quick, just a few frames. Gotta have a fade out. Alright, so I believe that is it on the tools you need, actually. It's just those few things. You could have multiple tracks. There we go. Bring this back up. And what I want you guys to do is record yourselves. At the start of class next week, I'm going to be reviewing stuff from last class with everyone else. You guys have to record. And then what you'll be doing is you'll have at least two audio tracks. Yourself on the top track, right? So we'll pretend that this is talking. So talk, talk, talk on the top track. And you cut it the way you need to. And if that means, you know, trimming out dead zones, right? Dead sound, dead air, as it were. There we go. Right? Trimming that out, having it timed properly. And then you put some sort of music or sound effects or some other track below you. And as you can see, there's no such thing as two things always being exactly the right speed or time. So you will probably have to tell the music to fade out. I don't want to hear anything getting cut off at the knees. I do not want to hear songs traveling on for a minute after you stop talking, because that means you weren't doing that. I don't want to hear any pops or anything like that, and I don't want to hear a bunch of dead space in between when you said things and had to cough or sneeze or something, right? We want those things out. I'm not looking for anything super complex. If if you do this nicely with the two, audio tracks, then you can get the B or B plus. If you want the A, maybe a little bit more. A little bit more finesse, a little bit more to it. But my key things here are no audio just stopping, nothing popping, or just showing up for that matter. All right, so we can't have this just bang, right? If you want to start the song somewhere else, you can fade it up just like this. And if you need to get closer to it, you just zoom in like that. And obviously that's a huge long fade. There we go. So you need to have something like that if you're starting the music at a different time than where it begins. I don't want to I don't want to hear anything cut off, and I don't want the dead space. We just want it nicely done, real simple. It doesn't have to be super complex. And it doesn't have to be that long. If you're talking for 20 or 30 seconds, that's plenty of time to accomplish what we're doing here. And when you're done, file. Well, first of all, file save. No. So, yeah, you got to make sure you're saving this, because if you do something wrong and I'm like, oh, that's not what you're supposed to do, then you need this file, which looks like this. There we go. Like that. You need that in there in order to fix things. And then to get an actual finished file that you would hand in, you'd say File, Export. You see, file's no longer available because we're not on that. Multi-track mixdown, which is the fancy talk for this stuff that's going on here. File, Export, multi-track mixdown, entire session, right? And because you guys are all good, you always put your last names on everything you hand in to me, so I know it's yours when I download it. And I'm going to put it in the same folder as everything else because I don't like things getting separated. There we go. Now, if I was a client and wanted high-end things and it was the final thing you're handing in, you would make it a WAV. I am not a client. I'm a teacher with limited internet access. So you're going to make it an MP3. So it doesn't take you forever to upload it and it doesn't take me forever to download it. And we're going to say OK. And you can see it, even this, it's short, but it took a little bit. And if we go back to my folder, it will be Benvenuto. There we go. So, and you can see the MP3 is only 4 megs. That's nothing. You can upload that real fast. All right, but that is what we are looking for. And if you have any questions, please give me a call, or excuse me, please email me. Thank you.